Bullies try to attack the McDonald's worker. Big mistake. She got revenge. The young woman behind the counter moved with practiced efficiency, her slender hands working the register while keeping her gaze deliberately lowered. At 24, Priya Sharma had learned that invisibility was sometimes the best defense in a world that seemed determined to remind her she didn't belong. Her delicate frame, standing barely 5 feet 3 inches, made her easy to overlook in the chaos of the fast food restaurant on Harrison Boulevard. The lunch rush was winding down, leaving behind the familiar scent of French fries and the sticky residue of spilled sodas that she'd soon be cleaning. 3 weeks. That's how long she'd been working at this McDonald's. 3 weeks since she'd moved to Phoenix from her hometown of Columbus, chasing dreams that now seemed impossibly distant. 3 weeks of double shifts, aching feet, and the constant reminder that her master's degree in biomedical engineering meant nothing when bills needed paying, and her work visa restrictions limited her options. 3 weeks of swallowing her pride, alongside the casual cruelties of customers who saw her as nothing more than another forgettable service worker. The bell above the door chimed, and Priya's entire body tensed involuntarily. She recognized the laugh before she even looked up. That harsh, grating sound that had become the soundtrack to her daily humiliation. Jake Morrison strutted through the entrance like he owned the place, his 6'2" frame filling the doorway, shoulders broad from his glory days as a college football player that had ended 5 years ago but still defined his entire identity. His leather jacket, worn despite the Arizona heat, bore the faded emblem of his former team, a constant reminder of when he'd mattered. Behind him, as always, came his entourage. Marcus Williams, lean and wiry with darting eyes that never missed an opportunity to record someone else's discomfort on his phone, and Ashley Chen, whose designer handbag and perfectly manicured nails couldn't hide the ugly satisfaction she got from watching others squirm. They moved as a unit, predators who had found the perfect prey in Priya's quiet dignity. "Well, look who's actually working today," Jake announced, his voice carrying across the restaurant with deliberate volume. "Thought maybe you'd finally figured out you don't belong here and gone back to, where was it again? Tech support?" Priya's fingers remained steady on the register keys, though her jaw clenched imperceptibly. "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" Her voice was soft but clear, each word carefully pronounced to minimize the slight accent that marked her as different, foreign, other. "Listen to that," Ashley stage whispered to Marcus, loud enough for everyone in line to hear. "She's trying so hard to sound American. It's almost cute." Marcus already had his phone out, angling it to capture Priya's face. She kept her expression neutral, a skill honed through years of practice, though inside, her stomach churned with familiar dread. What they didn't know, what nobody in this restaurant knew, was that Priya Sharma wasn't just another immigrant struggling to make ends meet. Back in Columbus, she'd been known by a different title, 3-time national Muay Thai champion, with a record of 32 wins and only 2 losses. She'd started training at age 7, her grandfather's way of ensuring she could protect herself in a world that wouldn't always be kind to a small Indian girl. "I'll have a Big Mac," Jake said, leaning over the counter, invading her personal space. "And make sure you don't put any of that curry sauce on it." He paused for effect, glancing back at his friends. "Oh wait, that's right. You people put curry on everything, don't you?" "We don't serve curry sauce here, sir," Priya responded evenly, entering his order with mechanical precision. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "The strongest warriors are those who win without fighting, Beta. Violence should only ever be your last resort when all other paths are closed." "Sir," Ashley mocked, giggling. "She called you sir. How formal, how subservient." The word hung in the air like a slap. Priya's manager, Tom Bradley, was nowhere to be seen, as usual. He had a remarkable talent for disappearing whenever Jake and his crew showed up, leaving Priya to handle their harassment alone. The other employees, mostly teenagers working their first jobs, kept their heads down, grateful not to be the targets themselves. "That'll be $18.47, Priya said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the heat rising in her chest. Jake threw a 20 on the counter, deliberately knocking over the tip jar in the process. Coins scattered across the floor with a metallic clatter that drew every eye in the restaurant. "Oops," he said with exaggerated innocence. "Better clean that up. Isn't that what they pay you for?" Priya came around the counter slowly, kneeling to collect the scattered change. Her movements were controlled, deliberate, each coin retrieved with the same focus she once brought to perfecting a spinning heel kick. As she worked, she heard Ashley's voice above her. "This is perfect, Marcus. Make sure you get her on her knees where she belongs." The phone camera clicked repeatedly. Priya's hands didn't shake, but something deep inside her began to fracture. Every day for 3 weeks, they'd been escalating. First, it was just comments about her accent, then jokes about her name, which they deliberately mispronounced as Pariah instead of Priya. They'd graduated to accidentally spilling drinks she'd have to clean, complaining about her to management, and now this, public humiliation for their social media entertainment. As she stood, coins collected, Jake was watching her with that familiar sneer. "You missed one," he said, pointing to a penny that had rolled under a nearby table. "Can't have you stealing from the register to make up for it." "I'm not stealing anything," Priya said quietly, retrieving the final penny. "That's what they all say," Marcus chimed in, still recording. "How do we know you're even here legally?" "Maybe someone should check your papers." The other customers in the restaurant shifted uncomfortably. An elderly couple exchanged troubled glances. A mother pulled her children closer. Everyone saw what was happening, but no one intervened. It was easier to look away, to pretend they hadn't witnessed the casual cruelty unfolding before them. Priya returned behind the counter and processed Jake's change, her movements automatic. $3.53. She counted it out carefully, placing it in his outstretched hand without making contact. He let the coins fall deliberately, scattering them across the counter. "Oops again," he said. "I'm so clumsy today." "Your order will be ready in a moment," Priya said, turning to prepare their drinks. Her hands remained steady as she filled the cups, but her mind was racing. She thought of the youth center where she volunteered on weekends, teaching self-defense to teenage girls. They looked up to her, called her Sensei Sharma, hung on her every word as she taught them about confidence, boundaries, and standing up for themselves. What would they think if they saw her now, silently enduring abuse she'd never want them to accept? The trio settled into their usual booth, the one in the corner with a clear view of the counter where they could continue their performance. Priya heard Jake's voice carrying across the dining room as she worked. "I don't know why they hire people who can barely speak English. This is America. We speak American here." "It's called English," a small voice said. Everyone turned to see a young boy, maybe 10 years old, standing near their table. "And she speaks it fine. You're just being mean." His mother quickly pulled him away, shooting an apologetic look at Jake while whispering urgently to her son. But the boy's words hung in the air, a moment of unexpected truth that made Jake's face redden with anger. "Mind your own business, kid," he snapped, then turned his attention back to Priya. "Order ready yet? Or do you need to call tech support for help with the fryer too?" Priya assembled their order methodically, each item placed precisely in the bag. She'd learned to be perfect in her work, giving them no legitimate reason to complain, though they always found something anyway. As she approached their table with the tray, Jake stuck his foot out. She saw it coming, her trained fighter's awareness catching the movement in her peripheral vision, and smoothly sidestepped it. "Getting clumsy in your old age, Jake." Marcus laughed, not realizing Priya had deliberately avoided the trap. She set their food down without comment and turned to leave, but Ashley's voice stopped her. "Excuse me, but this isn't what I ordered." She held up a perfectly normal hamburger. "I specifically said no pickles, and this has pickles." Priya knew it was a lie. Ashley always ordered the same thing, and she never mentioned pickles, but arguing would only make things worse. "I'll get you a new one," she said. "That's not good enough," Ashley said, her voice rising to draw attention. "This is the 3rd time this week you've gotten my order wrong. Where's your manager? This is completely unacceptable." Tom Bradley materialized from the back office, his face already wearing the expression of someone who wanted to be anywhere else. He was in his mid-40s, balding, with the defeated air of a man who'd given up on anything more than collecting a paycheck. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Your employee can't get a simple order right," Ashley complained, playing the aggrieved customer perfectly. "I don't know if it's a language barrier or just incompetence, but this is ridiculous." Tom looked at Priya with barely concealed irritation. "Remake the order," he said curtly, "and apologize to the customer." "But Priya started. "Just do it," Tom cut her off. "The customer is always right." Priya felt something inside her snap, not into rage, but into a cold, clear understanding. She was worth more than this. She had skills, talents, and dignity that no minimum wage job was worth sacrificing. But she swallowed her pride one more time, looked Ashley in the eye, and said, "I apologize for the inconvenience. I'll remake your order immediately." As she walked back to the kitchen, she heard Jake's mocking voice. "See? That's how you train them. You just have to be firm." The afternoon wore on with its usual rhythm of orders, cleaning, and casual degradation. Jake's crew lingered for nearly 2 hours, making increasingly bold comments every time Priya passed their table. They speculated loudly about whether she was a mail-order bride, if she lived in a cramped apartment with 20 other immigrants, whether she even had a green card. Each comment was carefully crafted to be just shy of something actionable, walking the line of harassment with practiced ease. During her break, Priya sat in the small employee break room, staring at her phone. Her lock screen showed a photo from her last competition, her standing on the podium, gold medal around her neck, surrounded by her team. She'd been somebody then, respected, feared even in the ring. Here, she was nobody, just another disposable worker in an endless cycle of exploitation. Her phone buzzed with a text from her student, Emma, at the youth center. "Can't wait for class tomorrow, Sensei. Working on that combo you showed us." Priya smiled despite everything. The youth center was her sanctuary, the one place where her true self could emerge. Tomorrow was Thursday, which meant 2 hours of teaching, 2 hours of being herself, 2 hours of mattering. When her break ended, she returned to find the afternoon shift arriving. Among them was Destiny Johnson, a 17-year-old high school senior who worked weekends and some afternoons. Destiny was one of the few co-workers who ever showed Priya genuine kindness, though she was careful to do so when Jake's crew wasn't around. "They giving you trouble again?" Destiny asked quietly as they stood side by side at the register. "It's fine," Priya replied automatically. "It's not fine," Destiny said, her voice fierce despite its low volume. "What they do to you is wrong. Everyone knows it. We're just all too scared to say anything." "Being scared is smart," Priya said. "You don't want to become their next target." "But you shouldn't have to take it either," Destiny insisted. "You're like the nicest person here. You never complain, never lose your temper. I don't know how you do it." "Practice," Priya said simply, though the word carried more weight than Destiny could know. Years of martial arts training had taught her more than just how to fight. It had taught her discipline, control, and the strength that comes from choosing not to use your power. The dinner rush began, and Priya lost herself in the familiar rhythm of work. Take order, make change, prepare drinks, call out numbers. It was mindless, which was both a blessing and a curse. The repetition allowed her to retreat into herself, but it also emphasized how far she'd fallen from her dreams. She'd come to Phoenix for a biotech startup that had promised to sponsor her H-1B visa. The company had folded 2 months after she arrived, leaving her scrambling for any employment that would keep her legal status while she searched for something in her field. The McDonald's job was supposed to be temporary, just a few weeks to pay rent while she interviewed elsewhere. But the weeks had stretched on, and the daily humiliation had worn down her confidence until she'd almost started believing Jake's words, that she didn't belong, that she was worth less than others, that this was all she deserved. Around 7 o'clock, as the dinner crowd thinned, Jake returned alone. Priya's stomach dropped. He was usually worse without his audience, meaner, more personal in his attacks. "Still here?" he said, approaching the counter. "Thought maybe you'd finally taken the hint and quit." "Can I take your order?" Priya asked, her standard response to his provocations. "You know what your problem is?" Jake said, ignoring her question. "You don't know your place. You come here, take jobs from real Americans, and act like you deserve respect. You don't. You're nothing. You're less than nothing." Priya's hands stilled on the register. In her mind, she could see exactly how this could play out differently. She knew precisely where to strike to drop him to his knees. The cluster of nerves just below his ribs, the pressure point behind his jaw, the vulnerable spot where his neck met his shoulder. She could visualize the sequence of moves that would leave him gasping on the floor in less than 5 seconds. But her grandfather's voice held her back. "True strength is not in the fist, Beta. It's in the heart that chooses peace even when war would be easier." "I said, can I take your order?" she repeated, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her. Jake leaned across the counter, close enough that she could smell the beer on his breath. "Your order," he mimicked in an exaggerated accent. "Can't you say anything else? Or is that all the English you know?" "Please step back," Priya said clearly. "Or what?" Jake challenged. "You'll call your manager?" "Tom doesn't care. You'll call the cops? For what? Hurting your feelings? Face it, you're powerless here. You're nothing." The word powerless echoed in Priya's mind. If only he knew. She'd once faced down opponents twice her size in the ring, had broken boards with her bare hands, had trained her body to be a weapon. But here, in this fluorescent-lit restaurant that smelled of grease and broken dreams, she chose to be powerless. Because keeping this job meant keeping her visa, meant staying in the country legally, meant having a chance at the life she'd sacrificed everything for. "I'll have a McFlurry," Jake finally said, apparently bored with her lack of reaction. "Oreo, and make sure you actually mix it this time." Priya turned to the ice cream machine, grateful for the excuse to put distance between them. As she prepared his order, she heard the bell chime again. Her heart sank as Marcus and Ashley entered, their voices already raised in laughter about something on Marcus's phone. "Jake," Ashley called out, "you have to see this video. Some guy tried to rob a store and got taken down by the clerk. It's hilarious." They clustered around Marcus's phone, watching someone else's humiliation for entertainment. Priya brought Jake's McFlurry to the counter, setting it down carefully. "That's not mixed enough," Jake said without even looking at it. "Do it again." Priya looked at the perfectly mixed McFlurry, then back at Jake. "It's mixed according to our standards." "I said do it again," Jake's voice hardened. "Or is following simple instructions too complicated for you?" She picked up the cup and returned to the machine, adding more Oreo pieces and mixing again. When she brought it back, Jake took it, examined it critically, then deliberately dropped it. The cup hit the floor and exploded, sending ice cream and cookie pieces across the clean tiles she'd just mopped. "Oops," he said, that familiar mock innocence in his voice. "Guess you'll have to clean that up and make me a new one. Better be more careful this time." Something in Priya's chest tightened to the point of pain. She looked at the mess on the floor, at Jake's smirking face, at Marcus already recording, at Ashley's delighted expression. Then she looked at the other customers, all carefully avoiding eye contact, at her co-workers hiding in the kitchen, at Tom's office door firmly closed. "No," she said quietly. Jake blinked. "What did you say?" "I said no," Priya repeated, louder this time. "You dropped it on purpose. I'm not making you another one." The restaurant went silent. Even the ambient music seemed to pause. Jake's face darkened with genuine anger now, not the performative cruelty he usually displayed. "You're refusing to serve a customer?" He said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tom, get out here!" Tom emerged from his office looking harassed. "What now?" "Your employee is refusing to serve me," Jake said, playing the victim perfectly. "I accidentally dropped my McFlurry, and she won't make me a new one." Tom looked at the mess on the floor, then at Priya. "Clean it up and make him a new one," he said tiredly. "He dropped it on purpose," Priya said, meeting Tom's eyes. He's been harassing me for 3 weeks, and you know it. You've watched it happen." "I don't know anything," Tom said quickly, "except that you're refusing to serve a customer. Now do your job or clock out." Priya felt a strange calm descend over her. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. "Then I'm clocking out," she said simply. "You're quitting?" Tom asked, surprised despite himself. "I'm done being treated like I'm less than human," Priya said, her voice carrying across the silent restaurant. "I'm done pretending this is acceptable. I'm done enabling bullies by being their victim." She untied her apron with deliberate movements, folding it neatly and placing it on the counter. As she walked around toward the exit, Jake stepped directly into her path. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his bulk blocking the way. "You made a mess, you clean it up. Move," Priya said simply. "Make me," Jake sneered, confident in his size advantage. Priya looked up at him, and for the first time, Jake saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate. It wasn't fear or anger. It was the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. "I'm asking you politely to move," she said clearly. "This is your only warning." Jake laughed, but it sounded forced. "You threatening me? That's assault. I could have you arrested, deported." "Asking you to move isn't assault," Priya said calmly. "But if you touch me, I will defend myself." "You'll defend yourself?" Ashley laughed from behind Jake. "You're like 5 feet tall. What are you going to do? Bite his ankles?" Jake, emboldened by his friend's presence, reached out to grab Priya's shoulder. "You're not going any." The movement was so fast that later, when people watched Marcus's video, they had to slow it down to understand what happened. Priya didn't just deflect Jake's hand. She redirected his entire body weight, using his own momentum against him. Her small hand gripped his wrist. Her body pivoted with perfect precision, and suddenly Jake was stumbling past her, completely off balance. He caught himself against a table, whirling around with shock and rage on his face. "You touched me! She assaulted me! Call the cops!" "You reached for me first," Priya said, maintaining her stance. Weight evenly distributed, hands relaxed, but ready. "Everyone saw it. And Marcus is recording, aren't you, Marcus?" Marcus lowered his phone uncertainly. The video would clearly show Jake initiating contact. "Delete that," Jake ordered Marcus, then turned back to Priya. "You're going to pay for this." He lunged at her again, this time with real violence in his intention. But Priya had been reading opponents' movements since she was 7 years old. She saw the telegraph in his shoulders, the shift in his weight, the way his right hand pulled back slightly before moving forward. She flowed around his attack like water around a stone, her movements economical and precise. This time, she didn't just evade. As Jake's momentum carried him forward, she caught his arm and locked it, using a basic but effective joint manipulation that left him completely under her control. He was bent forward, his arm twisted behind his back, immobilized by someone who weighed barely half what he did. "I don't want to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice meant only for him. "But I am a 3-time national Muay Thai champion with 15 years of training. I could dislocate your shoulder with 2 pounds of additional pressure. I could break your arm with 5. So I'm going to ask you once more. Will you let me leave peacefully?" Jake's face had gone pale. The pain in his arm was real, but more than that was the shock of complete helplessness. He'd never imagined that the quiet, submissive cashier he'd been tormenting was capable of this. "Let him go," Ashley shrieked. "Someone call the police. She's attacking him." "I'm defending myself," Priya said calmly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He tried to grab me twice. I'm using the minimum force necessary to protect myself." "She's right," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see a uniformed police officer standing in the doorway. Officer Rebecca Martinez was a regular who often stopped by for coffee during her patrol. "I saw the whole thing through the window. Sir, do you want to step away from the young lady, or do we need to have a longer conversation about assault charges?" Priya released Jake immediately, stepping back but maintaining her defensive stance. Jake straightened, rubbing his arm, his face red with humiliation and rage. "She attacked me," he said to the officer. "I want her arrested." Officer Martinez looked at him steadily. "Sir, I watched you physically block her path and attempt to grab her twice. She used appropriate self-defense. Now, would you like to walk away, or would you prefer I review the security footage and the multiple cell phone videos that I'm sure exist?" Jake looked around the restaurant. Several customers had their phones out, and their expressions were not sympathetic to him. The elderly couple from earlier was nodding approvingly. The mother with her children was actually smiling. The young boy who'd spoken up earlier was staring at Priya with something approaching awe. "This isn't over," Jake said to Priya, trying to salvage some dignity. "Yes, it is," Officer Martinez said firmly. "In fact, if the young lady wants to press charges for harassment and assault, I'd be happy to take her statement." Priya considered for a moment, then shook her head. "I just want to leave." "That's very generous of you," the officer said, then turned to Jake. "You and your friends need to leave, now. And if I hear about any retaliation, any continued harassment, any contact with this young woman at all, we'll be having a very different conversation. Understood?" Jake muttered something that might have been agreement and stormed toward the exit, Ashley and Marcus trailing behind him. At the door, Ashley turned back. "You'll regret this," she said to Priya. "We'll make sure everyone knows what you did. You'll never work in this city again." "Good luck with that," Destiny said, stepping forward. She held up her phone. "I've been recording too, including all the racist stuff you've said for the past 3 weeks. I think the internet would love to see how you treat service workers." Ashley's face went pale. She left without another word. The restaurant erupted in spontaneous applause. Customers Priya had served for weeks without acknowledgement were suddenly approaching her, offering support and congratulations. Tom stood behind the counter, looking lost and somewhat fearful. "Priya," he started, "maybe we can discuss—" "No," she cut him off. "I'm done. You watched them harass me every day and did nothing. You sided with them every time they complained. You made it clear that my dignity was worth less than their business. But you need to treat your employees like human beings," Priya said. She turned to address the other workers who had emerged from the kitchen. "All of you deserve better than this. You deserve managers who protect you, who value you, who don't let customers abuse you for entertainment. Don't accept less." As she walked toward the door, Officer Martinez fell into step beside her. "That was impressive," the officer said. "The restraint, I mean. You could have really hurt him." "Violence is always a last resort," Priya replied. "My grandfather taught me that strength isn't about what you can do to others. It's about choosing not to, even when you could." "Your grandfather sounds like a wise man," Officer Martinez said. "You know, the Phoenix PD is always looking for self-defense instructors for our community outreach programs, especially ones who understand de-escalation. If you're interested, I could put in a word." Priya paused at the door. "I volunteer at the Sunrise Community Center, teaching self-defense to teens. I know the director there, Linda Washington. Good program." The officer handed Priya a business card. "Think about it. We pay a lot better than McDonald's, and I guarantee no one would try to push you around." Outside, the Arizona evening was warm and clear. Priya stood on the sidewalk, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in weeks. Her phone buzzed with a text from Destiny. "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. You're my hero." Another buzz, this one from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Michael Chen from the video. I'm actually Ashley's younger brother. I'm sorry for everything she did to you. She's not always like this, or maybe she is, and I just didn't want to see it. Anyway, I wanted you to know that not everyone in my family is like that, and what you did was amazing." Priya walked to the bus stop, her mind processing everything that had happened. She'd lost her job, true, but she'd found something more valuable, herself. For 3 weeks, she'd let them make her small, let them convince her she was less than she was. But in those few moments of standing her ground, she'd reclaimed her identity. The bus arrived, and she found a seat by the window. As the city lights blurred past, she thought about her grandfather, about the promise she'd made to him before leaving Columbus. "I won't fight, Dadaji," she'd sworn. "I'll use my training only for competition and self-defense." She smiled, realizing she'd kept that promise. She hadn't fought, she'd defended. not just her physical self, but her dignity, her worth, her right to exist without persecution. When she got home to her small studio apartment, she immediately went to her closet and pulled out her gear bag. It had been weeks since she'd done any serious training, too exhausted from work and demoralized by the daily harassment. But tonight, she needed to move, to remember who she really was. She changed into her workout clothes and began her routine in the limited space of her apartment. Basic strikes first: jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Her form was still perfect, muscle memory carved into her body through years of repetition. Then kicks: front kick, roundhouse, side kick, spinning back kick. Each movement flowed into the next, a meditation in motion. As she trained, she thought about the kids she taught at the community center. Tomorrow, she'd have a new lesson for them, about standing up for yourself, about the difference between aggression and self-defense, about the courage it takes to walk away until walking away is no longer an option. Her phone rang, interrupting her workout. It was Linda Washington, the director of the Sunrise Community Center. "Priya, I just got the most interesting call from Officer Martinez," Linda said without preamble. "She told me what happened at McDonald's. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Priya said, still slightly out of breath from training. "Better than fine, actually." "Good. Because I have a proposition for you. You know James, our youth program coordinator, is retiring next month. I've been looking for a replacement, someone who understands these kids, who can teach them more than just activities. Someone who can teach them strength, confidence, resilience. The job is yours if you want it." Priya sat down heavily on her couch, overwhelmed. "Linda, The pay? $45,000 a year to start, full benefits, and you can expand the self-defense program however you see fit. Plus, we're applying for a grant that would let us offer free martial arts classes to at-risk youth. We'd need someone to head that program, someone with real credentials and competition experience." "I don't know what to say," Priya said, tears threatening for the first time all evening. "Say yes," Linda said simply. "The kids adore you. The parents trust you. And after what Officer Martinez told me about tonight, I think you're exactly the role model these young people need. Someone who knows when to fight and when to walk away, and has the strength to do both." "Yes," Priya said immediately. "Absolutely, yes." After the call ended, Priya sat in the quiet of her apartment, processing how quickly everything had changed. This morning, she'd been a minimum wage fast food worker, letting bullies chip away at her self-worth. Tonight, she was about to become a full-time youth coordinator, shaping young minds and bodies, teaching them the lessons her grandfather had taught her. Her phone buzzed with another text, this one from Emma, her star student. "Sensei, someone posted a video of you online. You're trending. Greater than McDonald's ninja, greater than self-defense queen. You're famous." Priya looked up the hashtag and was stunned to find dozens of videos from different angles, all showing her confrontation with Jake. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. This is why everyone should learn self-defense. She gave him so many chances to walk away. True strength. The way she stayed calm the whole time. Queen energy. Notice how she only used exactly as much force as needed. That's training and discipline. But what struck Priya most were the comments from other service workers. "I wish I had her courage. I deal with harassment every day. This is every retail worker's fantasy come true." She said what we all think but are too scared to say. Over the following days, the videos continued to spread. Local news picked up the story, framing it as a discussion about workplace harassment and the treatment of service workers. Priya declined most interview requests, but she did agree to one with a local reporter who had a reputation for thoughtful coverage. "What would you say to other people facing harassment at work?" the reporter asked. Priya thought carefully before answering. "Document everything, know your rights, and remember that no job is worth your dignity, but also learn to protect yourself, not just physically, but emotionally and legally. Take self-defense classes not because you want to fight, but because knowing you can defend yourself changes how you carry yourself. Predators look for easy targets. Don't be one." The interview aired on the evening news, and by the next morning, Priya had received dozens of emails from young women asking about self-defense classes. Linda was ecstatic. "We're going to need a bigger space," she said, showing Priya the flood of inquiries. "That grant I mentioned? After all this publicity, it's basically guaranteed. You're going to be teaching a lot more than just Thursday evenings." Priya threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. She developed a comprehensive program that taught not just physical techniques, but also situational awareness, de-escalation tactics, and the legal aspects of self-defense. Her classes filled up immediately, with waiting lists stretching months out. One Thursday evening, about 6 weeks after the McDonald's incident, Priya was preparing for her advanced class when she noticed a familiar face hovering in the doorway. Ashley Chen stood there, looking uncomfortable and very different from the put-together mean girl who had tormented Priya. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple workout gear, and her expression was uncertain, almost fearful. "Can I help you?" Priya asked neutrally. Ashley shifted nervously. I wanted to talk to you. To apologize, actually." Priya studied her for a moment, then gestured for her to enter. They sat on a bench at the side of the training area. "I watched the videos," Ashley began, her voice small. "Not just of that night, but the ones people posted after. Compilations of how we treated you. How I treated you." She paused, seemingly struggling for words. "I didn't recognize myself. Or maybe I did, and that's worse. I saw this cruel, petty person who got pleasure from hurting someone who never did anything to deserve it." Priya remained silent, letting Ashley work through her thoughts. "My younger brother, Michael, he was so disappointed in me. He said he'd lost respect for me, that I'd become everything our parents taught us not to be, and he was right." Ashley looked directly at Priya for the first time. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, doesn't erase what we did, but I am genuinely, deeply sorry." "Why?" Priya asked simply. "Why did you do it?" Ashley was quiet for a long moment. "Because I could," she finally admitted. "Because Jake made it seem funny, and I wanted to fit in. Because you were different and quiet and didn't fight back. Because I was unhappy with my own life, and taking it out on someone else made me feel powerful." She laughed bitterly. "Except I wasn't powerful at all. I was just a bully hiding behind someone bigger." "And now?" Priya asked. "Now I want to learn," Ashley said. "Not just self-defense, but control. Discipline. How to be strong without tearing others down. Jake won't return my calls anymore. Says I betrayed him by apologizing. Marcus posts passive-aggressive things about loyalty, but losing them made me realize they were never really friends. They were just people who enabled my worst impulses." Priya considered this. Her grandfather had always taught her about redemption, about the possibility of change. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he'd said, "because we all have the capacity to grow." "The beginner class is on Tuesdays," she said finally. 6 o'clock. Don't be late." Ashley's eyes widened. "You'll let me join? After everything?" "Everyone deserves a chance to become better than they were," Priya said. "But understand this. In my class, everyone is equal. No one is above or below anyone else. We respect each other, support each other, and leave our egos at the door. Can you do that?" "Yes," Ashley said immediately. "Yes, I can. I will." As Ashley left, Priya reflected on the strange turns life could take. 6 weeks ago, she'd been contemplating whether she could endure another day of harassment. Now, she was teaching one of her former tormentors the very skills that had allowed her to finally stand up for herself. The advanced class filed in, a diverse group of teenagers and young adults who'd been training with Priya for months. Emma, her star student, bounced over excitedly. "Sensei, did you see? The video has over 5 million views now. You're like, actually famous." "Internet fame is fleeting," Priya said with a smile. "What matters is what we do with the attention while we have it. Speaking of which, I want to talk to you all about something." The class gathered around, sitting in a semicircle on the mats. "Many of you have seen the videos from McDonald's," Priya began. "Some of you have asked why I didn't fight back sooner, Why I let it go on for so long? These are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers. She paused, organizing her thoughts. Violence, even in self-defense, should always be a last resort. Not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to try everything else first. Every day at that job, I had to make a choice. Respond with force or maintain my discipline. For 3 weeks, I chose discipline. But they were hurting you, one student said. Everyone could see it. They were, Priya agreed. But the hurt was emotional, not physical. And while emotional pain is real and valid, it doesn't justify physical retaliation. I only acted when they tried to physically prevent me from leaving, when they attempted to grab me. That's the line. When someone tries to control your body, to take away your autonomy, that's when you defend yourself. But what if they hadn't touched you? Emma asked. What if they just kept blocking your way? Then I would have called the police, Priya said. False imprisonment is a crime. But more importantly, I want you all to understand something. The goal is never to fight. The goal is to get home safely. If that means walking away, you walk away. If it means calling for help, you call for help. Fighting is what we do when those options are taken away from us. She stood, moving to the center of the mat. Now, let me show you the technique I use to redirect Jake's grab. It's actually quite simple, based on using an attacker's momentum against them. The class proceeded with its usual mix of technical instruction, physical conditioning, and philosophical discussion. Priya taught them not just how to throw a punch, but when not to throw one. She taught them to read body language, to recognize escalation, to project confidence that might prevent a confrontation from ever beginning. As the weeks turned into months, Priya's program at the community center grew exponentially. The grant came through, allowing them to offer free classes to over 200 at-risk youth. She hired assistant instructors, developed a curriculum that could be replicated at other centers, and even started a mentorship program pairing advanced students with beginners. Jake Morrison never returned to that McDonald's, though Priya heard through the grapevine that he'd been banned from several other establishments after videos of his behavior went viral. His employer, a construction company, had apparently had a serious conversation with him about representing their values. Marcus Williams deleted his social media accounts after the backlash, and Ashley Chen became one of Priya's most dedicated students, eventually earning her yellow belt and volunteering to help with the children's classes. One evening, nearly a year after the incident, Priya was closing up the center after a particularly rewarding advanced class when her phone rang. It was an international number, India. Dadaji? She answered, recognizing her grandfather's number. Beta. His warm voice came through, slightly distorted by the distance. I saw the video. Mrs. Gupta from down the street showed me on her computer. You became quite famous, it seems. Priya felt tears prick her eyes. I'm sorry, Dadaji. I know I promised not to fight. You didn't fight, he interrupted gently. You defended. There's a difference. One I perhaps didn't explain well enough before you left. Fighting is when we seek conflict, when we use our strength to dominate others. Defending is when we protect ourselves and our dignity from those who would take them from us. You did exactly what I taught you to do. I was so scared I disappointed you, Priya admitted. Never, her grandfather said firmly. You showed restraint, wisdom, and courage. You gave them every opportunity to stop, and you used only the force necessary to protect yourself. But more than that, you've taken this experience and used it to teach others. This is the true way of a warrior, not to defeat enemies, but to create a world where enemies become allies. After the call ended, Priya stood in the empty training hall, looking at the wall of photos she'd started, pictures of all her students at various stages of their training. In the center was a framed quote from her grandfather. True strength is not measured by how hard you can hit, but by how much you can endure without losing your compassion. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Sensei, I stood up to a bully at school today. Didn't have to fight, just used my voice and my presence like you taught us. She backed down. Thank you for showing us that we're stronger than we think. Priya smiled, thinking about how different her life had become. A year ago, she'd been serving fast food to people who saw her as less than human. Now, she was shaping the next generation, teaching them not just to defend themselves physically, but to carry themselves with the dignity and confidence that made physical defense rarely necessary. She locked up the center and headed home, passing the McDonald's where everything had changed. It looked exactly the same from the outside, the golden arches glowing in the darkness. Through the windows, she could see the night shift workers, young people much like she'd been, trying to make ends meet while maintaining their dignity in the face of whatever challenges their shift would bring. On impulse, she went inside. The young man at the counter looked tired, his uniform slightly rumpled from what had probably been a long shift. His name tag read, David. "Welcome to McDonald's," he said automatically, then did a double take. "Wait, aren't you? This just a customer," Priya said with a smile. "Long night?" "The longest," David admitted, then glanced around nervously, as if expecting to be reprimanded for the honest response. Priya ordered a coffee and left a $20 tip. As David's eyes widened, she said, "For dealing with difficult customers. We all deserve respect, no matter what job we do." She left before he could respond, but through the window, she saw him show the tip to his co-workers, all of them gathering to look out at her retreating figure with expressions of surprise and gratitude. The walk home was peaceful, the Phoenix night warm and clear. Priya thought about the journey that had brought her here, from champion fighter to humiliated fast food worker to respected teacher and community leader. Each phase had taught her something valuable, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. Her phone rang. Officer Martinez, who had become a friend and frequent guest instructor at the center. "Priya, I have someone I'd like you to meet," Rebecca said. "A young officer who's interested in starting a self-defense program for domestic violence survivors. She saw your work and thinks you'd be perfect to consult." "Interested?" "Absolutely," Priya said without hesitation. "Great." Also, completely unrelated, but I heard through the grapevine that Jake Morrison is taking anger management classes. Court-ordered after an incident at a bar, but still, maybe people can change. "Everyone has that capacity," Priya said, thinking of Ashley's transformation. "Sometimes they just need to face consequences first." After the call ended, Priya reflected on how interconnected everything had become. That one moment of standing up for herself had rippled outward, affecting dozens, then hundreds of lives. Students who found confidence, bullies who faced accountability, bystanders who learned to speak up, and service workers who realized they deserved better. She thought about the young woman she'd been just a year ago, quietly enduring abuse because she thought she had no choice. That woman had been strong too, in her own way, strong enough to endure, to survive, to keep going despite the daily humiliation. But she'd learned that there was a different kind of strength in standing up, in saying no more, in refusing to be diminished. The next morning brought a new challenge. A local high school had reached out, asking if Priya could speak to their students about bullying, self-respect, and conflict resolution. As she prepared her presentation, she thought carefully about the message she wanted to convey. She decided to start with a story, not about the confrontation itself, but about the 3 weeks leading up to it, about the slow erosion of self-worth that comes from constant harassment, about the bystanders who saw but said nothing, about the systems that protected the aggressors instead of the victims, and then, crucially, about the moment of choice that everyone faces, to accept the unacceptable or to stand up, even when standing up seems impossible. The high school auditorium was packed. Teenagers sat in clusters, some attentive, others skeptical, many on their phones. Priya didn't start with martial arts demonstrations or dramatic statements. Instead, she began quietly, almost conversationally. "How many of you have ever felt powerless?" she asked. Slowly, tentatively, hands began to rise. First a few, then more, until nearly every hand in the room was up. "I want to tell you about a time when I felt completely powerless," Priya continued. "When I let others convince me I was worthless, that I didn't belong, that I deserved to be treated as less than human. And then I want to tell you about the moment I realized that powerlessness was a choice, that I had given my power away and I could take it back. She told them the story, not glorifying the confrontation, but examining it critically. She talked about the difference between revenge and justice, between aggression and assertion, between violence and self-defense. She showed them basic stances and awareness techniques, but more importantly, she taught them about dignity, boundaries, and the courage to enforce them. But what if we're not fighters? One student asked. What if we can't do what you did? Physical self-defense is just one tool, Priya explained. Most conflicts can be resolved without it. Use your voice, document harassment, report it to authorities, support each other, be the bystander who speaks up instead of looking away. And if you want to learn physical self-defense, not to hurt others, but to feel confident in your ability to protect yourself, then learn. But remember, the goal is never to fight. The goal is to live with dignity and help others do the same. After the presentation, a young girl approached her, waiting until the others had left. She was small, quiet, reminded Priya painfully of herself a year ago. "I'm being bullied," the girl said quietly. "Every day. Like what happened to you. But I'm scared. If I fight back, they'll hurt me worse. If I tell, they'll call me a snitch. I don't know what to do." Priya sat down, putting herself at eye level with the girl. "What's your name?" "Sarah," the girl replied. "Sarah, I'm going to tell you something important. You don't have to fight to be strong. Document everything. Write down dates, times, what was said or done. Tell trusted adults, parents, teachers, counselors. If one doesn't listen, tell another. Build a support network. And know this, it's not your fault. People who bully do so because of their own issues, not because of anything you've done." "But they say I deserve it," Sarah said, tears threatening. "I believed that too," Priya admitted. "For 3 weeks, I let them convince me I was worth less than others. But here's the truth. No one deserves to be bullied. No one deserves to be made to feel small. Your worth isn't determined by what others say about you. It's inherent, unchangeable, and no one can take it from you unless you let them." She gave Sarah her card. The community center offers free self-defense classes for teens. But more than that, we offer a supportive community. Come check us out. And remember, asking for help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. As Sarah walked away, standing a little straighter, Priya saw another ripple extending outward from that moment in McDonald's. Each person she helped would potentially help others, creating an ever-expanding network of strength and support. That evening, Ashley arrived for the advanced class she'd worked her way up to. She'd become one of the program's success stories, channeling her natural leadership abilities into mentoring newer students. As she warmed up, she approached Priya. "I saw Jake yesterday," she said quietly, "at the grocery store. He looked different, smaller somehow, not physically, but like he'd lost something. His sense of invincibility," Priya suggested. "Maybe," Ashley agreed. "He saw me and started to approach, then saw my training gear and changed direction. I almost felt sorry for him." "Compassion for former enemies is a sign of growth," Priya said, "but maintaining boundaries is wisdom." The class began, and Priya watched her students train with pride. Among them were former victims of bullying, survivors of assault, kids from rough neighborhoods, and even some former bullies seeking to change. They moved through their forms with growing confidence, each strike and block building not just physical strength, but inner resilience. Destiny from McDonald's had joined the classes too, bringing several other fast food workers with her. They'd formed their own support group, sharing stories of customer abuse and strategizing ways to protect each other. Tom Bradley, the former manager, had been replaced after corporate received numerous complaints following the viral videos. The new manager, Maria Rodriguez, had implemented strict anti-harassment policies and actually enforced them. As the class progressed through partner drills, Priya noticed a new face watching from the doorway, a middle-aged woman in business attire. After class, the woman approached. "Miss Sharma, I'm Dr. Patricia Henley from the State University. I run our criminal justice program, and I've been following your work. We're developing a new curriculum on restorative justice and conflict resolution. I'd like to offer you a position as an adjunct professor, teaching practical self-defense and de-escalation techniques to future law enforcement officers and social workers." Priya was stunned. "I don't have a teaching degree." "You have something better, Doctor," Henley interrupted. "Real-world experience and a proven track record of turning conflict into teachable moments. Your approach, emphasizing restraint, de-escalation, and minimum necessary force, is exactly what we need to be teaching. The position comes with continuing education benefits if you'd like to pursue formal credentials." It was another door opening, another opportunity born from that single moment of standing her ground. Priya accepted, adding university teaching to her growing portfolio of responsibilities. As months passed, the ripple effects continued to spread. The community center's program became a model, replicated in other cities. Priya was invited to speak at conferences, to train other instructors, to consult with schools and corporations about harassment prevention and response. She never forgot that it all started with saying no to making another McFlurry for someone who didn't deserve her service. One day, almost 2 years after the incident, Priya received an unexpected letter. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting looked deliberately careful. She opened it to find a single page. "Miss Sharma, you don't know me, but I know you. I was in that McDonald's the night you stood up to those bullies. I was one of the customers who said nothing, did nothing, just watched it happen. I've carried that shame for 2 years. But more than shame, I've carried inspiration. Watching you defend yourself with such control and dignity changed something in me. I started speaking up when I saw injustice. I enrolled in self-defense classes. I stopped being a bystander in my own life. Last week, I witnessed a man harassing a young woman on the bus. The old me would have looked away. Instead, I stood up, moved to sit next to her, and asked if she was okay. The man backed off. The woman thanked me. It was a small act, but it mattered. I wanted you to know that your courage that night didn't just free you. It freed others to find their own courage. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept the unacceptable. With gratitude and respect, a former bystander." Priya read the letter 3 times, tears finally coming. This was the true victory. Not the physical confrontation, not the viral fame, not even the career opportunities. It was the knowledge that standing up for herself had inspired others to stand up too. Her phone buzzed with a reminder. She had the youth class in an hour. She gathered her gear and headed to the center, thinking about the lesson she'd teach today. Maybe she'd tell them about the letter, about how individual acts of courage could inspire collective change. As she entered the community center, she was greeted by the sound of laughter from the kids' area. Emma was leading the warm-up, having become an assistant instructor herself. The girl who'd once been too shy to speak in class now commanded the room with natural authority. "Sensei Priya!" the kids chorused as she entered, their faces bright with excitement. "Who can tell me the first rule of self-defense?" Priya asked. A dozen hands shot up. She pointed to a small boy in the back, one of the newer students. "Awareness," he said proudly. "Know what's happening around you." "Excellent." "And the second rule?" "Avoidance," another student called out. "If you can avoid danger, do it. And if you can't avoid it, de-escalation." The class responded in unison. "And if that doesn't work? Defense, but only with the minimum force necessary." Priya smiled. These children, some from the roughest neighborhoods in Phoenix, were learning not just to fight, but to think, to evaluate, to choose wisdom over ego. They were breaking cycles of violence that had trapped their communities for generations. "Today," she announced, "we're going to talk about something just as important as physical technique: moral courage. The courage to do what's right even when it's hard, even when we're scared, even when we're alone." She told them the story of the letter, about the former bystander who'd found their voice. She talked about the Ashley, who'd transformed from bully to mentor. She talked about small acts of courage adding up to big changes. "Each of you," she said, looking at their attentive faces, "has the power to make a difference. Not through violence, but through strength. Not through aggression, but through assertion. Not through hurting others, but through protecting those who can't protect themselves. As the class progressed, Priya watched these young people practice not just kicks and punches, but confidence and compassion. She saw future leaders, advocates, protectors. She saw the next generation learning that true strength wasn't about domination, but about dignity. The class ended with their traditional circle, each student sharing something they'd learned or accomplished that week. One girl had stood up to older kids trying to recruit her younger brother into a gang. A boy had intervened when he saw someone being cyberbullied online. Another girl had helped a classmate report abuse to a trusted teacher. Small acts, each one, but together they formed a pattern of change, a network of young people who understood that they had power and, more importantly, how to use it responsibly. As the kids filtered out, chattering excitedly about the upcoming tournament, where points would be awarded not just for technique but for sportsmanship and control, Ashley approached. She'd been assisting with the class, working toward her instructor certification. "I've been thinking," Ashley said, "about starting a program at my college, anti-bullying education combined with self-defense training. Would you help me develop it?" "Of course," Priya said, proud of how far Ashley had come. "But you don't need my help as much as you think. You've become a teacher in your own right." "Because you gave me a second chance," Ashley said, "when you had every reason not to." "Everyone deserves the opportunity to become better than they were," Priya replied, echoing what she'd said 2 years earlier. As the evening advanced, more classes came and went: the women's self-defense group, the seniors' gentle movement class, the law enforcement de-escalation training. Each group brought its own energy and challenges, but the core message remained the same: strength without aggression, power with purpose, defense without unnecessary violence. Late that night, as Priya finally headed home, she passed by the McDonald's again. It had become a sort of ritual, a reminder of where she'd been and how far she'd come. Through the window, she saw the night shift dealing with what looked like difficult customers, a group of young men being loud and demanding. She watched as the young woman at the counter maintained her composure despite their obvious harassment. Then she saw something that made her smile. The woman straightened her spine, looked the lead troublemaker directly in the eye, and said something that made him step back. The manager appeared, clearly supporting the employee. The group left, grumbling but defeated. Progress, Priya thought. Slow but real progress. Her phone rang, her grandfather calling from India. "Beta," he said warmly, "I heard you're teaching at the university now." "A professor." "Just part-time, Dadaji," Priya said, though she couldn't hide her pride. "Your grandmother would be so proud," he said, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. "She always said you were meant to be a teacher. Not just of fighting, but of living with honor." They talked for a while about family, about his health, about the monsoon season that was starting. Then, just before hanging up, he said something that stayed with her. "You know, Beta, I've been thinking about that promise you made before you left. I realize now I was wrong to make you promise not to fight. I should have asked you to promise to fight wisely, to fight for what matters, to fight with compassion. But you figured that out on your own, didn't you?" "With your teachings as my guide, Dadaji," Priya said. "No," he said firmly. "With your own heart as your guide. I just gave you some tools. You decided how to use them." After the call ended, Priya stood in the warm Phoenix night, thinking about journeys and destinations, about the unexpected paths life could take. She'd come to this city chasing one dream and found another entirely. She'd lost a job that diminished her and found a calling that elevated not just her, but everyone around her. The next morning brought new challenges and opportunities. A documentary filmmaker wanted to feature her story. A publishing house was interested in a book about her teaching philosophy. A national anti-bullying organization wanted her to join their board. Each opportunity was weighed not by prestige or payment, but by potential impact. How many people could she reach? How many lives could she touch? How many cycles of violence could she help break? She chose carefully, accepting the documentary because it could reach young people nationwide, declining the book deal for now, because she felt she still had too much to learn before teaching through writing, joining the board because policy change was necessary for lasting impact. But her heart remained in the direct teaching, in the faces of students discovering their own strength, in the moments when someone who'd felt powerless realized they had choices, in the transformation of bullies into allies and victims into victors, not through domination, but through dignity. One afternoon, while teaching a special seminar for social workers, one of the participants asked a question that made her pause. "How do you forgive?" the woman asked. "How do you move past the anger at people who hurt you?" Priya thought about Jake, about those 3 weeks of torment, about all the moments she'd wanted to lash out, but didn't. "Forgiveness isn't about them," she finally answered. "It's about you. Holding on to anger is like gripping a hot coal. You're the one who gets burned. I don't forget what was done to me, and I don't minimize it. But I don't let it define me either. Those who hurt me were teachers in their own way. They taught me about my own strength, about the importance of boundaries, about the systems that enable bullying. Without them, I might never have discovered my true calling." "So you're grateful to them?" the social worker asked, skeptical. "No," Priya said clearly. "I'm grateful for my own response to them. I'm grateful for the strength I found, the voice I discovered, the path that opened up. They were obstacles that revealed my capabilities, but I would never thank them for their cruelty, and I would never wish that experience on anyone else." The seminar continued, diving deep into the psychology of both aggression and defense, the sociology of bystander behavior, the physiology of fear and courage. These social workers would go on to work with abuse survivors, at-risk youth, and sometimes with perpetrators seeking to change. The tools Priya gave them were both physical and philosophical, practical techniques married to ethical frameworks. As the seasons cycled through, Priya's impact continued to ripple outward. Students she'd trained became trainers themselves, spreading the philosophy of mindful self-defense. Some joined law enforcement with a commitment to de-escalation. Others became social workers, teachers, counselors. A few even opened their own martial arts schools, but with a twist, focusing on building community and preventing violence rather than just teaching combat techniques. Emma, her first STAR student, got a full scholarship to college, based partly on an essay she wrote about finding her voice through martial arts. She planned to study criminal justice and become a victim's advocate. "You saved my life," she told Priya at her graduation from the youth program. "Not from physical danger, but from accepting less than I deserved." Even Tom Bradley, the former McDonald's manager who had failed to protect Priya, reached out eventually. His message was brief but meaningful. "I was wrong. I chose the easy path instead of the right one. I'm managing a different restaurant now, and I've implemented strict anti-harassment policies. Your courage taught me that standing by while others are hurt makes me complicit. I'm sorry, and I'm trying to do better." Priya didn't respond immediately, taking time to process this unexpected apology. Finally, she wrote back, "Growth requires acknowledging our failures. I appreciate your apology and your commitment to change. Protect your employees. Their dignity matters as much as your profits." The McDonald's where it all happened became an unexpected pilgrimage site of sorts. People who'd seen the videos would stop by, take pictures, share their own stories of standing up to bullies or finding their courage. The current manager, Maria, embraced it, putting up a small plaque that read, "Everyone deserves respect. Everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves to work without fear." Corporate initially resisted, but when they saw the positive publicity and increased traffic it brought, they made it a model for their anti-harassment initiatives nationwide. It was a small victory, but Priya knew that systematic change happened through accumulation of small victories. 2.5 years after the incident, Priya received an unexpected visitor at the community center. Jake Morrison stood in the doorway of her office, looking nothing like the swaggering bully she remembered. He'd lost weight. His posture was humble rather than aggressive, and his eyes held something she'd never seen in them before: genuine remorse. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," he began, stopping her before she could respond. And I'll leave if you want. But I needed to apologize. In person. Properly. Priya studied him for a long moment, then gestured to a chair. Say what you need to say. Jake sat, clearly uncomfortable, but determined. I've been in therapy for 2 years, court-ordered at first, after I got into a bar fight and the judge saw my history. But then I kept going because I realized I was broken, not in a way that excuses what I did, but in a way that explained it. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I peaked in high school. Football star, popular, everything came easy. Then college was a bust. Injured my knee freshman year, lost my scholarship, dropped out. Suddenly I was nobody, working construction, watching everyone else move on with their lives. And instead of dealing with that, I took it out on others. On you, specifically, because you were everything I wasn't. Educated, skilled, going somewhere even while working a minimum wage job. That doesn't excuse, Priya began. No, Jake interrupted. It doesn't. Nothing excuses how I treated you. I was racist, cruel, and I turned your workplace into a nightmare. I'm not here for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I'm here to take responsibility and to tell you that your standing up to me changed my life. Not in a good way at first. I was angry, humiliated, lost my job when the videos went viral, but it forced me to look at myself, really look, and I didn't like what I saw. He pulled out an envelope. I've been volunteering at a homeless shelter, trying to give back instead of just taking. I saved up some money. It's not much, but I wanted to donate it to your program. Train more people to stand up to bullies like I was. Priya took the envelope but didn't open it. Why now? She asked. Why come here after all this time? Because my therapist said I couldn't move forward until I made amends. Real amends, not just feeling sorry for myself. And because he hesitated. Because I have a daughter now. She's 6 months old, and the thought of someone treating her the way I treated you makes me physically sick. I need to be better, to be someone she can be proud of, someone who owns his mistakes and tries to fix them. Priya considered this for a long moment. I appreciate your apology, she finally said, and I'm glad you're getting help. But understand, forgiveness isn't mine to give alone. You hurt many people, not just me. Your work isn't done with one apology. I know, Jake said, standing. I've apologized to everyone I could find. Some accepted it, most didn't. But I'll keep trying to be better, every day for my daughter, if nothing else. As he turned to leave, Priya made a decision. Jake. He turned back. There's a men's group that meets here on Wednesday nights. Former addicts, abusers, bullies, men trying to break cycles of toxic behavior. You might find it helpful. His eyes widened in surprise. You'd let me come here? After everything? Everyone deserves a chance to change, Priya said. But you have to do the work. Really do it, not just perform it. And if you ever slip back into old patterns, you're out. No second chances on that. Jake nodded, understanding the weight of the opportunity. I'll be here. And thank you. For everything. Even for standing up to me. Especially for that. After he left, Priya sat in her office, processing the encounter. She thought about cycles, of violence, of redemption, of change. Jake's appearance was proof that even the worst bullies could potentially reform, given consequences and support. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it offered hope that the cycle could be broken. That evening, she shared the encounter with her advanced class, using it as a teaching moment about the complexity of human nature and the possibility of redemption. Does this mean we should just forgive everyone who hurts us? One student asked. No, Priya said firmly. Forgiveness is a personal choice, not an obligation. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing someone back into your life. Sometimes the best forgiveness is releasing the anger while maintaining the boundary. Jake may have changed, but he'll never be someone I trust or want in my personal life. However, if he's genuinely committed to change, I won't stand in his way.